Hello. Can you see my screen okay before we get going? Everybody can see the presentation. Great. So welcome. It's Helen Patterson of Life Works Well, and I'm the founder of this organization that helps scaling businesses create heart-centered and high-performance cultures. And I am a big fan of mentoring. So that is one thing that we love to get involved in. So I started this series when the pandemic hit back in April was the first sessions, and we've gone through everything from leadership to layoffs to mental health. And the last three of our series are getting back to basics and finishing 2020 strong. And here in Ontario and in Canada, it is Financial Literacy Month. So I'm really excited about today's session. In November, it's Financial Literacy Month. So we have an amazing expert who's joining us today. So welcome everybody. And I am going to just move on. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is that not only do we support entrepreneurs, but I also advise a lot of HR professionals and young professionals who work with me as well as part of the mentoring. And it's so important, even early in your career, to understand financial acumen and things like that. So we're going to cover Financial Literacy Month, some business basics and some financial acumen and tips. And we'll have plenty of time for questions. As you know, I like to try to make these as interactive as possible. And so feel free to put a note in the comment if you care to as well. So I love, for those of you who have joined me for a few of these sessions, you know, I always love to put my quotes in there. And it's just so amazing that finally some organizations are starting to understand that financial health is also part of overall well-being and probably one of the best things that's going to help people. So being financially fit is amazing, and we have the perfect person to talk to about that today. So let me just introduce you to Tracey Bissett. We met a few years ago, and Tracey is the founder, well, the president and chief financial fitness officer, but of Bissett Financial Fitness. She's also a full-time faculty and professor at Centennial College. She's a financial expert, and I'll share her slide and her background. Amazing. She has a fantastic podcast called Young Money Podcast for millionaires in the making. So if you're just starting out in your career or as an entrepreneur, or you have the side hustle, perfect place to be to get some tips from Tracey today. You can see her amazing background here. She had a master's, an MBA, chartered financial analyst. She's worked with the big banks, including being an executive at TD Bank prior. Her as an entrepreneur, she has done amazing with her clients, helping them with their financial services. And so also an award winner. So we're very, very lucky to have Tracey today. So thank you for being here, Tracey. For those also that have joined before, you know, I like to throw out a few stats before we get going. And so Statistic Canada, as you know, puts out a number of surveys. And right now, about 3/4 of Canadians, so 73.2%, actually have some kind of outstanding debt. I know when I started out years and years ago, I had my student loans and other debt that it took me a while to pay off. So I wish I had you back then, Tracey. But anyway, so there's a lot of financial stress as well out there. And, you know, another thing about Financial Literacy Month, it's the 10th anniversary. You can go to the Financial Literacy Month web link there. And I share these presentations, as you know, and there's some links at the end. And they had a great infographic and some top 10 things. And I just pulled out a few here because not only is when you think about financial literacy and just understanding what can help you with your money and getting comfortable with money. But there's other things like financial fraud, and with internet and technology, this is happening even more. So there's lots of information on that website that can help you. Budgeting, we're going to cover a lot of this today. So what do you need to succeed? Well, you need someone like Tracey in your corner helping you out. There's some resources, again, that I can share later, but I thought I'd just go through this. Basically, having financial freedom is something we all want to do. So really, this is going to be I'm just going to stop the share, and I'm just going to let Tracey pop out there. And so Tracey, I thought we'd start out by looking at who's here today. It's a mixture. We have some young professionals. We also have some people that are a little more experienced in marketing and HR, but that also might have a side hustle. So it's a little bit of an interesting group. So I guess I'll just start with, whether you're an employee or whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, what are some of the key things you can do to start thinking about how to, build your finances, savings, not get into huge debt?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Helen. I'm delighted to be here. So it's going to be a great session. First of all, I think it starts with your mindset, and you need to take accountability for the financial aspects, whether it be of your life or of your business's life. And it's not anybody else's job. And I think that's something that everybody's got to get their head around. Oftentimes, when I start working with people or they contact me, whether they're entrepreneurs or individuals, they've just kind of let it go to the side. They haven't really taken the time to dig into it. And I like to think of it as kind of being a financial detective. You're kind of putting the pieces together in terms of your life or your business and how it works. Financial acumen is so important. As you mentioned, Helen, it affects not only our financial life, but it actually affects our physical well-being. It affects our relationships with other people. So if we're not handling it, we're probably going to feel stressed, and that's going to come out in different places. We may not be physically well after that. When you're just starting, I think you need to kind of evaluate where you're starting. What kinds of things do you know? What do you not know? And take small steps. So you mentioned the name of my company, and it has financial fitness in it. And while I love financial literacy, I don't love the term. So I want to throw that out there because I view it to be a highly negative term. It already presumes that you are illiterate when it comes to financial matters. And I like to come at it from a positive angle. So I talk about financial fitness. And you could be anywhere on this kind of spectrum, just like physical fitness. We could be taking that first step off the couch and we could be walking around the block. That's like learning about different kinds of bank accounts, maybe learning about the concept of a budget. Or we can be really far on the right-hand side. We could be training for marathons or half marathons, whatever we want to view to be more further along on the spectrum. And same financially, we could be learning how to become a more sophisticated investor. So by having the mindset that, yes, I'm going to be accountable for this, and then really reflect on, where are you on this kind of spectrum? And everywhere is okay. Everybody's starting their journey where they are, and you need to take small imperfect actions daily to keep moving along and learn more. But there's no one place to start, and you've got to figure out, what do you know and what do you want to know?
That's great. That's great. I love that. I think that that's so true with so many things, that the mindset is a great starting point. And to just learn early, even things like contributing to RSPs. Like someone might, like my daughter who's just turned 20 and still in college, so university, and really, if we don't help her, how is she going to learn? And I never had that growing up. I didn't really figure out a lot of that. So I just wanted to also welcome anybody. If you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat, or feel free to pop out at any time. One of the what's one of the main things you would suggest, like if you're thinking about, like I've always heard about savings, like forced savings. So making sure if you do get if you're on payroll as an employee, there's different types of accounts you can set up. Sometimes the organization offers things. So do you have any advice about that, about what, if you're an employee or a young professional that is still wanting to work full time, not starting a company yet? We'll talk about that and then maybe move into entrepreneurs. But are there some things that you could recommend that they could do?
For sure. So I would everyone here has probably heard the saying, do not spend more than you make. And that's absolutely critical. And your spending habits start as soon as you get that full-time job. So you have to know exactly not what your salary is, but actually how much hits your bank account. And so you've got to be conscious of the taxes and all those other deductions that are going through. If you're just in the stage where you're going to be evaluating offers, don't dismiss companies that maybe have a lower salary. You need to really dig into that benefits package. There is so much value in there. So Helen mentioned a couple of things. One that's really key in big corporations is they're going to have probably a share ownership program. So you want to get in with that, because for every dollar you spend, they're going to contribute 50 cents, likely up to a certain amount. So that is free money. You don't want to miss that and leave that on the table. If they've got some kind of pension plan, or they have some RSP matching or anything like that, you want to get involved. You also want to make sure you get all the right benefits. And I can't highlight enough or strongly enough how important it is to make sure you have the right insurances. So when you get big benefit package from your organization, make sure you read through it, make sure you ask questions, and you pretty much should be signing up for everything, is just kind of a tip. And so I can give you an example. Happened to my brother and it happened to a friend of mine. They both didn't choose critical illness. And critical illness is a kind of insurance that's there for you if you should get sick, so you're still alive, but you might need money. And usually you get that money if you're diagnosed with cancer, you have a heart attack, a stroke. Those are the majors. And most people kind of overlook that. But what happens is they just give you a check for a certain amount of money that you can do with as you will. And if you're very fortunate to recover very quickly, no big impact, you can use that money for whatever you want. So I share that example because my brother, when he first signed up, when he was younger and signed up for his benefits, he didn't choose that, or he eventually chose it, but at a very low amount. A friend of mine also did the same thing, and my brother had cancer, my friend had heart issues, and they got these free checks, but they were not able to maximize the amount of money that they got. So make sure you read the fine print and ask questions. Everything related to financial is about asking questions and making sure that you understand. Helen also alluded to kind of that concept of paying yourself first. So if you can set up automatic contributions to a savings account on the day you get paid, wonderful. If you have a mortgage or you have other payments that have to happen at a certain time, try to align them with your payday. So the money gets scooped right away. You don't need to worry about keeping for another time. So you're paying those bills. As young as you can, you should be starting an RSP, so a registered retirement savings plan. I was super fortunate that I had parents who helped me and helped me learn things, and I started mine when I was 18. The beauty of that is I didn't contribute a lot every month, but I had the benefit of time to make that money grow. And that's kind of one of the wonders of the world we call compound interest, where you earn interest on interest. If you are starting from a place where you feel like you don't know very much, that's okay and perfectly normal. The school system does a terrible job of equipping students with knowledge to be able to make those kinds of decisions on their own. And I do think it's really unfair to look to parents. So in your case, Helen, you're helping your daughter, but your parents weren't able to help you, and that's not their job. They probably were never trained as well. It's great if they can, but we do need to look for other resources. One thing I would suggest for everybody who's here today and who might be listening to the replay, there has never been an easier time to learn about money, about personal finance, about business finance. Find somebody that speaks in a language that you get and follow them. It could be a podcast, it could be a video, it could be a blog. There's lots of great books out there. One in particular by a Canadian author that's really great is Young, Fun, and Financially Free. It's kind of the Coles Notes of everything you would need to know, written by Leanna Hawkins, and she's fantastic. And she grew up a self-professed kind of money nerd. She used to watch MSNBC every day after school. And so she was really into it, but she realized her friends didn't know very much. So if you're just getting started, that is an excellent resource that kind of breaks it down from A to Z. Really easy to read. You can read the whole book in a couple hours.
Well, that sounds good. What's the name of the book again, just to have it?
Young, Fun, and Financially Free.
Oh,
And a
fun.
portion of her proceeds go to We Charity. And it's
Wow.
a Canadian book, which is important because there's so many that are US based books. So it can be even more confusing when you don't know which terms are which.
Yeah, that's what's really important because of the tax regime up here that would be different. And so that so far, that's all great advice. And I think it's so important, not to have the debt, to try to contribute it to the RSPs as early as possible. My daughter already has a credit card, which she's always checking out her credit scores. I don't know. She has some app or something like that. So it's kind of interesting, but I wonder.
So I'd love to weigh in on that actually, because use caution when you're using those kinds of apps, because, and this kind of ties into one of the stats you had about fraud and cyber issues, is that as soon as you give a third party access to your information, the bank can actually turn around and not cover you from frauds that happen in your bank account, even if they have nothing to do with each other. So a lot of these apps where you can access your credit score, you just put in your information, link it to your bank account, that can cause harm to you potentially down the road, because if you do get hit by a fraud on your credit card or your bank account, they're going to say, well, you disclosed your password once and your information, so we're not liable anymore.
Wow, that's really good to know. I'll have to check that out and let her know, because I think that, I mean, the one that is legit, I guess, is Equifax, right? And I think that
There's two credit bureau agencies in Canada, so Equifax and TransUnion, and you can access your credit report absolutely free from them. You can go on their websites and check it. You can actually obtain subscriptions with them as well, so you can check all of the time. It's pretty nominal amount, but certainly you can do it free. You don't need to spend any money, and that's the way you should be doing it.
Well, that's great to know. She should have been on today. I'll have to get on her, because I don't want her. But the thing is, they are actually at least trying to learn, because they know that to develop a good credit rating is important as well. So even if it's a $500 max credit card or something. So there's all these things that are really important starting out. So maybe we could shift a little bit. And again,
if I could, I'll add. If I could jump in one more tip that's going to
Sure.
save people, it's also on the fraud theme, because financial literacy is about all of these things. You want to make sure you have port protection on your cell phone. Because if you've noticed, in most apps, when you forget your password and they're going to give you a code, they text it to you. So if somebody has my phone, or they've transferred my number to their phone, all of a sudden they can get into everything that I probably possibly have. So it's something you arrange with your cell phone provider, so that your number cannot be transferred without your written consent, with verification of your identity, so somebody can't get access to all your stuff. So you just call your provider and they will do it. There's no charge for that. So I'm with Rogers, and once I learned that from a woman actually at Equifax, I certainly did that.
Wow, that's a really great tip, because I'm sure most people don't know that. And, there's so much that we do on a phone. Everybody does everything on their phone, banking, all kinds of, saving passwords. And so to have that, yeah, that's
well, you
pretty
get that
scary.
text verification code. That's on like everything I have, because I never remember my passwords.
Oh,
So if somebody else had access to that information, they're going to take everything I've got.
I
So
know, it's
gotta be
scary,
careful.
isn't it? It is scary. And I mean, I feel bad for we'll get off a little off topic and then we'll shift back, but the elderly too, because even recently my in-law had someone, and she's not on Facebook and things, but she set up my sister-in-law set up an account just so she could see people's pictures, and some fraudster got a hold of her, and she almost went to the bank and took out money. The banker, the teller, the bank rep helped her, said, you know what, wait, this is wrong. And I think she had already gone to a drugstore to get some gift cards or something. And I felt so bad for her, because, obviously I don't know what they told her, but it's just scary out there. So that's really, really important ways to ensure not only are you understanding about your finances, but how to protect things. So that's great. So
sorry, I'm going to just jump in one more thing. In the resource you provided with that link to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, FCAC website, for those that are interested, they actually have a breakdown of all of the financial scams and frauds that people try to pull on you. And they have cute little names like the romance one, like where someone all of a sudden online falls in love with you, and now immediately there's an urgent need for you to send them money. But it breaks them all down, so you can actually a feel for what's going on in Canada, perhaps that might affect you or may affect other people in your family, so you could share the information with them.
Well, that's great. Well, and I do send out the presentation and it gets up on my website with the links. So for anyone that wants to check out some other things, and this is the thing, there is so much more information that's available now that wasn't before. So it's also trying to figure out where to go. So now I do have a few people on here that, two things. First, let's just finish off with the gig economy. There's a lot of people that aren't getting offered all these perks until they get full-time work and they're with a company that has all those wonderful things. If you can get in with those companies that have stock options or share purchase plans, but there's a lot of companies and startups that only have salary. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Maybe you can give them a few tips on, what to do in those situations where all you're getting is the salary. And then secondly, because some of them have the side hustle, they're starting to build their own business. They want the security of the full-time work, but then on the side, do you have any thoughts on, once you start getting from employee to freelancer, then a business owner with employees, some thoughts on how to budget, how to structure your finances that might be helpful? Sorry, that was a lot of questions in one.
Okay. So if you are on salary with an employer and you don't have full benefit package, I mean, certainly you want to protect yourself. You want to go and get outside benefits. I think that it is short-sighted not to do that. You may be thinking, I'm young, I'm not going to get sick, nothing's going to happen. As soon as you say that, something's going to happen. So you want to make sure that you do have some protections in place. If you're working for an organization though, but you are a contractor, which means that you charge them HST when you're over that 30,000 amount, or you may not, you need to make sure that you're segregating those funds that you'll need to remit to the government. So as soon as you're on a contract, without it being salary, make sure that you understand what are going to be your tax liabilities and make sure that you're putting the money aside. When we collect HST and we are responsible for tax obligations ourselves, we need to make sure that we put that money away, because oftentimes when it comes to the time you're doing your income tax, you're not going to have the money when the tax bill is due. So that's one that I do see repeatedly where people haven't realized that they're going to be on the hook. So in both situations, though, what you want to do is, just like we talked about, figure out your budget. So how much money is actually coming in, figuring out what your expenses are, and then start saving and set up that automatic transfer, which you can do at a financial institution, so that the money comes in, it automatically moves. So you can start saving, start your own either tax-free saving account, your own registered retirement savings plan, as well as an emergency fund is super important, especially if you don't have benefits, especially if maybe there's going to be some lumpiness in your income. If you are a contractor, you want to have money for if the car breaks down, if your pet gets sick, if something happens to where you live. Maybe you use a laptop to do your work that's not provided by the company. All of a sudden it breaks. You're going to have those kinds of expenses that just pop up. So have some emergency fund, and further your financial education. So find somebody, like I said, that you resonate with. Everybody talks about things in a different way, but where you're comfortable to increase your knowledge. And as I said, kind of one day at a time, but let's learn something every day. If you've got this business on the side, that's exciting. You want to make sure that before you even start, you validate the idea. So I'm a huge fan of business plans. Most entrepreneurs do not want to make them. They want to just jump in and get started with the business. But you really want to validate your idea for a couple reasons. One, that somebody actually wants to buy what you're selling. That's important. Number two, that they want to buy it at the price that you need to price it to actually make a profit. And so if it's a service-based business that you're doing, you might get caught up in, well, it's just my time. I don't need to charge very much. It doesn't matter. I can work all the time. You need to think when you're setting your prices, what if I need someone else to do this in the future? Because you're going to be so successful that you're going to hire all these people. And what happens then? Does the price still work? And so I work with entrepreneurs. Sales are typically between 100,000 and 2 million. And the issue is the same. They went into business so they could have more freedom and flexibility. Unfortunately, they're not making any money. They're not getting a steady paycheck. They're not living up to the promises or commitments they made to themselves or their family. And it comes down to pricing, and they're losing money on everything that they're selling, product or service. So I cannot impress upon you enough, validate that business plan idea. When you're thinking about quitting your perhaps full-time opportunity and moving into the side hustle full-time, make sure that not only are you replacing your income, so what you actually can take out of the business, because you still have your life to pay for, but that you do have money for the expenses of the business. So sometimes people might leave their full-time job a little bit too soon. So you got to make sure the idea actually works, make sure you can make money, and that it's actually going to make enough money to support you and whoever else you need.
That's great. Do you, I'll open it up to others in a minute. One last thing I want to ask, if, when you started out, I'm just curious about your transition from an executive at TD to then, um, creating your own business. You talked a little bit about the business plan, but what's your recommendation on that? Because I think, just to quit without having had started seems very scary for most people. But are there some sort of a methodology you would go through? Like the first thing I think is the business plan from the sounds of it, or doing the market research. But are there organizations that can help people when they're thinking about that? Is there a process that you sort of followed when you decided to do that?
No, I kind of had in my mind what I would do. Like once I got my head around, I'm going to go and become an entrepreneur. So I did do a quasi business plan. And for those who don't know lots about my background, because I was at TD in commercial lending and risk management, I had a really good sense of like how much money I'd need to charge and how much work I'd have to do to be able to replace my income. So that's a little bit unfair advantage that I would have over somebody else. But a couple things, I didn't realize how much would be coming at you. I knew there was a lot, but so I was an expert at the bank and an executive. I was great at like 3 things. Now I've got to do 50 things, and I don't know how to do 47 of them. So you've got to seek out people who are doing the same kind of thing as you. So you have a support system. You've got to find people who know more than you do in other areas. And I'm not talking about just hiring them on your payroll. Become friends with them. Maybe you take some courses. Maybe they do some part-time work for you. But you've got to find people to help you advance things in the business, because things take a long time, more than you think. They're going to cost more than you think. And so part of a business plan is doing financial projections. So you got to see realistically, how long could I live on if you're having a severance? How much will that last me? If I'm going to make investment in the business in different industries, it's going to be a different startup cost. If you're going to go out and just provide coaching services on your own, you're not going to have this big infrastructure up front. But if you're providing some kind of product where you got to create a manufacturing process, that's going to be a lot of money up front, and you probably need a physical location. So again, mindset comes into play. Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, they are the bank for entrepreneurs in Canada. They have fabulous resources on their website. So one is actually a free business planning template. They will also give you other tips and techniques for things you've got to review as you start a business. Another great organization is called Startup Canada, and they do Twitter chats a couple times a week on all different subjects, and it's really geared towards helping people with all the kind of things that pop up when you're starting a business. So if you're thinking about a side hustle, thinking about a full-time business, or you're even in it, I would say certainly get on Twitter, follow them. On their website as well, they've got a couple podcasts, and they have other free resources that will help. So there's lots of resources in there. And then I typically, as I'm starting to follow these kinds of organizations, the other stuff pops up. So there's Futurepreneur is a great organization, but you just want to be open and actually actively seek out a community with people who can support you, people who are going to know more than you, and just be prepared for the hard work. I used to work 60 to 80 hours a week in the office. I did not think I could work more, but I do. But that's okay, because I'm doing things I want to do. So I'm tired. So don't glamorize the entrepreneur experience, I think, is another good piece of advice.
Yeah, well, that's great. I know my team knows that there's a lot of things that are not my strengths as an entrepreneur. So there you go. That's why you have to get assistance. And I sort of accidentally fell into it too. And it's a huge learning curve. And finances and tech, not my strong suit. So there you go. Get the help you need. And I think this is really great because I know that there are a lot of people that, they have this dream, they have this passion, and they have the skills and strengths to do it. But then to actually start a business, it's pretty scary, and you need the support. So one of the things, I'm glad you mentioned Futurepreneur, because with Futurepreneur, not only do you get funding, and it's for younger entrepreneurs. There's an age, I forget what the age limit is, but it's under 40, I think, for sure. 18 to 35 or 40. And so they provide a lot of supports, and they provide mentors. And that's how I was that top 5 finalist. Happy to be that. But it's a great organization. Thank you, Tracey. They actually, not only do they provide the funding, it's a 2-year commitment for the mentor relationship. You get the mentor, you fill out the application, you let them know what you need. They help. There's a business plan template. They have a lot of tools and resources. So if you're interested in looking at that, once you have your ideas and things like that. The other organization that Tracey, I think that's maybe how we met, was through SheEO.
Yeah, I didn't mention that one though, but that's another
Yeah,
good
and
one.
SheEO it's all women on today, but SheEO is a great organization that Tracey and we are activators. And so we put in a certain amount every year. And Vicki Saunders, who started it, has created a pool of funds which provides an interest-free loan to entrepreneurs. Now, there's some criteria. You have to have 50,000 K, I think, in revenue. It has to be over 51% women-owned. And there also has to be a corporate social responsibility or working on the world's to-do list. But once you get to that point, it's a great opportunity. Ventures apply to get funding. We just did the first round of voting. So there's other communities like that starting up too, that are creating an ability for entrepreneurs when they're starting out to get access to some funds. There's angel investors. Sometimes that's hard to find. I mean, tech investment is tough. There's still, much less support apparently for women, and for BIPOC entrepreneurs. Historically, they have been underrepresented in this area as well as funding. So I think if you're in those categories, there's lots of opportunity. If you have an idea, find a mentor if you can, because when you're starting out, often you don't have that funding to get coaching. But one of the things I would suggest also, though, is if you see someone out there that has a business and you'd like to start a similar one, don't be afraid to follow them, kind of comment, get to know them, then maybe reach out. And a lot of people, they want to help others out. So I think that there's ways of getting help when you have an idea. I'm going to open it up quickly. Does anyone have a specific question for Tracey that they'd like to hop out and ask? Tracey has a lot of financial expertise, so it's open. You can ask whatever you like. Hopefully, she can answer, and if not, I'm sure she can refer you to someone. Does anyone have one? Might be a quiet group.
While people are thinking, one thing I'll touch on is the importance of financial acumen when you're working in an organization. So your career trajectory will be stunted if you do not have that level of financial acumen. In one of my roles, we used to support the risk committee of the board with the senior executive and the external directors at TD. And I can tell you that you're not going to make it very far and get into those executive ranks if you don't know how to read the company's financial statements, if you can't speak intelligently about your budget. All of that stuff comes into play. And so you might think, I'm working marketing, I don't need to know about numbers. That's not the case. To be able to have perhaps the trajectory that you want to in your career, and to be a well-rounded executive, you certainly need to be able to do that stuff. So super important.
Well, that's a great point. And for HR too, one of the things historically is that the profession There has been a lot of, oh, shoot, what happened there? Are you there?
We're here.
Sorry, I lost everybody. Hang on a second. Now I hit a button by accident. There's always something on each of these. But for the HR profession, that was one of the criticisms for years, that the profession didn't have enough financial acumen. And so there's a lot of recommendations to take those additional courses. I'm surprised that even under the regulated profession, there's focus on other parts, including adding all the employment law, but they haven't added like a section on financial acumen as part of, really understanding it. So that's a great piece of advice. And, there's always lots of freebies out there for trying to get a basic understanding on, how to read financial spreadsheets and
Even statements. So people might not even know what I mean. Like, there's a balance sheet that shows all the assets and the obligations of the company. There's the income statement that shows how all the money is made, and then all the expenses. And to your point, Helen, one of the largest expenses is going to be people. So if you can't talk about the costs for all the people, and whether it's a severance, whether it's all the benefits, all that stuff, it really is super key. So a very basic starting point, especially if you're in a public company, you have access to all their financial information. So download it, read it, ask somebody who knows more than you do, just to start getting acquainted with what do those statements look like.
Yeah. Oh, and I noticed Jamie is on, and congratulations, Jamie. She's a new mom. So I'm so excited for her. And we met at ADP. And I recall that when I started there, they actually did have an online module training to learn how to read the ADP financial statements, because they were a little bit different on how they explain some of their net income and some of the other terms. So is there any specific course or something that offhand that's a good one for people, especially those just starting out in their career, those on my team who are here, who it's tough for some of the newer career, like so much of the roles are contract, and so the more you can differentiate yourself and have all this other knowledge from a business perspective be helpful for them if they don't offer them internal.
Yeah, actually on BDC's website, they have a financial management game to try to make it fun, to kind of learn the basics of the financial statements. But even if you go on YouTube and you Google how to read financial statements, there's so many free videos and offerings there. So take advantage of that. Some of the key things in your career you'll have to do would be either contribute or create a budget yourself. So perhaps if you're in marketing, you might have to have the full budget for a campaign that you're going to do. Or that you're proposing. And so the expectation is that you can do that and you reasonably source costs. But most of the time, every area of an organization is contributing to finance, to the people, the cost of those people, and all of that kind of thing. If you work in an area that has a requirement for more physical assets, maybe it's more computers, whatever it is, just being knowledgeable about what the expectations are. The other organization that has lots of great resources, and sometimes you can find them in the not-for-profit section, but CPA Canada. If you look under like governance and how to, just Google that, you'll be able to find the basics of how to read financial statements. They've got some great stuff. And they do a lot of that to help people who are going to go on boards for the most part. So that's another way to differentiate yourself as well. Sometimes younger in your career, you might be in a committee that supports a board, but we all know lots of not-for-profit organizations who need board members. So you could be developing those financial acumen skills while working on a board as well. You're not going to be the finance person on the board, but everybody has to make decisions about the money aspects when you're a member of it. So that's another way to get that experience without it being in your employment.
That's great. Well, that's awesome. So don't be shy. Does anyone have a question? Quiet group today.
Yeah, hi. I have a question here. This is Sanya.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
so a bit more on retirement benefits. What are the good ones, and how do we know if we can afford to retire? What should we be mindful of?
So as early as you can start investing is important. I would suggest that you actually have a consultation with a financial planner and actually go through that. What they're going to talk to you is about what are your goals? What is your time horizon? So how much time would you have to be able to save to meet those goals? They'll be able to then select different investments based on your risk profile. So how that's a function of your risk appetite. So how comfortable you are with risk, but also how much time you have until you're going to need those monies. So there's so many different investment types out there, but the key is that you get a plan that's tailored for you. So there's two types of financial planners out there. There is one who is tied to an organization who would do the investing for you, and they get paid based on the investments that they make. So they don't charge you a fee for the plan. We also have in Canada fee-only planners where they sit with you and they create a financial plan for you, but then you can go off and actually execute it on your own if you wanted to do your own investing, or find someone to do that investing for you. So there's the standard financial planners are at all financial institutions. It's very easy to find them. A great organization I do recommend for fee-only planners is Shannon Lee Simmons. It's the New School of Finance, and they have a really great approach. It's a reasonable rate that you pay, and you know you're getting unbiased financial advice because they're not recommending particular investments. They're not recommending particular companies. They're recommending the type investment based on your risk tolerance, your time horizon, and taking into account all of the goals that you have. So just like everything else, you should be interviewing financial planners. It's almost like dating. You want to make sure that you get along. You want to make sure that they speak to you in a way that's respectful and that you understand. If you ask questions and they don't have a good reaction, you got to go find a different one because they should make you feel absolutely comfortable, and you should be able to ask any question that you have. And often people will say, well, I don't know what to ask. And that's perfectly normal as well at the beginning. But once someone starts explaining things to you, then the questions are going to kind of just flow out like turning on the tap, and you want someone who's going to respond and answer all of the questions that you have. Little bit general advice, but I think that can set you on the right track.
Right. And do we have some sort of self-assessment forms that, we can picturize where we want to be, what kind of expenses we would be incurring? Like, are there any resources or any sort of online assessment tool that we can take?
A lot of banks have them on their sites. So if you go into look for financial planning or wealth management, they'll probably have like a calculator to figure out if I save X amount per month at this rate, what it's going to do. And they may have some templates as well. FCAC does have some budgeting templates as well, and they have a budget calculator to kind of help you figure out that piece. But it's really around what are your goals. So if you think about, okay, maybe I want to own a home at this stage, I want to have a car, maybe I want to go back to school, I want to start a family, I'm going to need to save money for children's education. Like, think about the kinds of things you like to do in your life, jot them down so they're top of mind, and then you may need to prioritize how much goes to each. For some people, travel is extremely important, and so while we're not doing it now, hopefully in 2021, so some people build their budgets with enough to go on 3 trips a year, and then will sacrifice spending money on something else so that they can do that. So everybody's is going to look a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That helps. And
You're
great
welcome.
session. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's great, Tracy. And Sanya, you may want to, and for anyone here, you may want to check your employee assistance program. The employee family assistance programs, some of them are starting to add financial advice as part of the offers. So again, once you get that benefit plan, if you're fortunate enough to, check it out and see, sorry, what's available. And I think that's one of the overlooked areas, is that, they may have some of that where you can hop on with a counselor and look at that. And I was going to say that about the banks too, because there's on, my banking, I've seen that you can do, financial planning, retirement, plug in some numbers, also even on your credit cards. So your credit, you can actually put a budget in there, and it'll tell you if you've overspent on your budget, which I generally do. Which now I have to get Tracey getting on top of me, because Tracey does not like anybody to waste money, including like if you're signing up for coaching or something and you can do a lump sum versus monthly, and it's more when it's monthly, do the lump sum if you can, because you're
If
saving.
you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is on the New School of Finance website. She's going to have great content as well, kind of the how-tos to financial planning. There's probably even a list of what should you bring when you come to an appointment, so that you can even frame in your mind what are all the things I should gather and look at, because most people don't know all of their bills, even their income off the top of their head. They've got to go and gather up those pieces of information. So having all that is a very great place to start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
that's
is,
helpful because we do have sessions, as Helen said, family assistance programs. We are having sessions starting December, so that's a good one to prepare ourselves. What are the right kind of questions to ask?
oh, that's fantastic that you're
Yeah, it's
organizing.
paid when you dig it.
Yeah.
It's painful to dig up the information, but it's very much worth it. Then you want to have a very organized filing system if you're going to have paper. Don't get complacent about just keeping them in your online banking in online. Like, make sure you download them. Digital records are fine too, but you got to have all that information. So that will make it easier, so that when you want to make the plan, you just have to plug and play with the pieces.
And that's great for an individual, and if you're about to start a business, like the importance on being on top of that. I know so many stories about, someone hiring their accountant and they take this big box of receipts, and if you can get proactive and get organized in advance. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask Tracey while we have her here? Anything goes, anything finances.
While people are thinking, I'll give them a chance. One thing I want to talk about is judgment. So you judging others or people judging you. So especially during COVID, there's a lot of judginess happening. So check your judgment. People shouldn't be judging you about your choices, about your money. Everyone, as I said, has their own goals. And I feel like if you're living within your means, you can do whatever you want with your money. Whether or not I think it's great, that's not my business. So also watch your judgment of other people. People will make assumptions about others based on how they look, how they might appear on social media. So we don't know the story, which is important to keep in mind. Unless you know someone's actual financial situation, you don't know. So don't presume somebody makes so much more than you if they have these wonderful Instagram stories, traveling, eating out, just buying lots of stuff. Don't get sucked into that. So I find that gratitude is a better place to start. Be grateful for what you have and what you can do, and focus on yourself. So don't be judgy, and tell others not to be judgy of you.
Oh, that's nice. I like that advice.
Well,
Yeah.
that's been coming up a lot for the last
Well,
8,
there's a
9
lot of
months.
smoke and mirrors out there, right? As you know, the whole thing about posting, which is, for you and I are very similar, Tracey, in that, we've had our careers, we've created our businesses, and we also want to give back, right? And that's what having money, like, people don't like to talk about money, but having it and accumulating it is a good thing if especially if you want to give back. And I just wondered if you
I
could just.
actually had some stats on that because TD
Oh,
just released a survey. So 34% of people are reluctant to talk about their finances, and 24% would rather talk about politics than money, which is crazy. And I know just from prior research that I've done, people would rather talk about sex than money. So
and that's taboo.
and the reason people don't want to is they think it's impolite. So 37% of the people say it's impolite to talk about money, which I think is, again, kind of crazy. They don't want to seem like they're bragging at 13%, and 18% is they don't want to be judged. And I think the more we can open up money conversations, have it just part of normal dialogue, not that you're bearing your soul necessarily to everyone that you know, but no, I don't want to go and do that because I'm saving towards my goals. So if everything is framed in the context of your goals, you can bring it up with other people. Yeah, that's not my priority right now. I know you want me to go to that concert with you, but that's not where I want my money to go. And then that's a different way of saying it versus I don't have any money, right? Because
Yeah.
if we frame our decisions and our actions all in the context of, does this get me closer to or farther away from my goal? If you just get in the habit of asking yourself that, decisions become quite easy. Yeah, I'd really love to eat out tonight. I like to get delivery because I'm lazy and tired and I don't want to make food tonight, but is that going to help me save up for that trip I want to go on next year? No, I probably should just make something that costs a couple bucks and I already have groceries here. So ask yourself that question, kind of a prompt, but then it also gives you a tool when you might be feeling pressure from others to do things.
Yeah. Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Well, if no one, does anyone have a question? Anyone else?
The final thing, while people are still thinking, make sure if you're eligible for, you have applied for any COVID funding supports that you qualify for. Especially early on, I had a lot of conversations with individuals and business owners who were going to leave the money for other people. They were being selfless. If you qualify, get the money. If you want to just keep it in your bank account, build up that emergency fund, do it, but don't be selfless. Take the money. We're all going to be paying for this for a long time in our taxes. So everyone should get their share of the funds. And if you need it, that's why it's there. But if you don't need it, still apply if you qualify, get it and keep it for, we don't know what's happening in the next few months and you might have a need for it.
Yeah, it's been a tough year for a lot of people. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your scholarship
Sure.
that you just created? I think you're about to announce some of the recipients or something.
Absolutely. So it was my pleasure to start this year the Young Money Scholarship Fund. It is for post-secondary students studying in Canada. And there's a lot of scholarships out there for those who don't know, for people with high marks, who do a lot of volunteering or lower income for financial need. And so there's kind of the 20% on the top, 20 on the bottom, and then there's what people have coined the middle 60, where there's not actually a lot of offerings available for people. So my criteria is, number one, they need to share a story of how they've helped someone else accomplish their goals. And Helen mentioned it, we both like to give back, and I want to see that in the youth who are going to get the money. And they are going to also tell me a plan for their future. So they have a little bit of a plan about why they're studying, what they're studying, and what they hope to do. Plans change, obviously, but we had a lot of great applicants. We have just awarded the money to 7 very deserving individuals across Canada. Next week on Young Money Podcast, we'll announce their names, and it is so inspiring and really phenomenal. We had a review committee who reviewed them, and very interestingly and amazing enough, the people who were reviewing all came up with the same people that they wanted to award the money to. So I think that speaks to how strong these applicants were. And when I was that age, I didn't know about, they're wanting to do things with traditional lands and help Indigenous people from an environmental perspective. They want to help youth with mental health or addiction issues. And there's just so much breadth of opportunity, and the willingness that they have to want to help others is really super inspiring. So I'm excited for that. They've got their money, which is great. And if you tune in, you'll hear them next week on Young Money Podcast. And then I will be doing some interviews with some of them so that you can actually hear from them directly. But it's been my privilege. I think that when you make money and when you have money, you have a duty to help others. That's my philosophy. So this is the first round of many. And if you know people who are still studying, make sure you highly encourage them to apply for scholarships. A lot of them don't get many applications. We had to try really hard to get people to apply, but once we got onto a couple people who were promoting it, they flooded in. But a lot of scholarships go unanswered, and so nobody should take it.
Yeah, hopefully I'm at I'm at Lake Erie today, so I think there was a little bit of glitches, but I think overall the recording worked well. So just to close then, where can people find you? I do have links in the presentation, I'll send that out. But where can people find you if they want to reach out for more information, obviously, and follow the Young Money podcast and things like that? Where's the best place?
Best place to reach me and connect with me is on LinkedIn. So Tracey has an E and Bissett has 2 S's, 2 T's. Love to connect with you there. Love to answer any questions. Sometimes if it's not my area of expertise, a question you may have, I'll refer you on to somebody else in my network. But I do have pretty extensive network. And from there, you can find the podcast, my website, all of that stuff. I'm on all the social platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, not on TikTok, and I don't think I'm going to go there. So just not on that one right now.
Is it it's at Bissett Financial, or is it at Tracey Bissett for the
Bissett FinFit.
FinFit? Yeah. And
yeah,
I do
but if
have
you on LinkedIn, you'll be able to click to my website, and then all the handles are there.
So if you, I mean, I think the Young Money podcast is great because there's always all kinds of valuable information. And so, you know, you've been doing that for a couple of years now, so you have quite the followers. I really hope people were able to get some nugget today. And, you know, if you do have questions for Tracey and you just didn't want to ask today, reach out, because as you can see, she loves to share her knowledge. And I really, really want to thank you for being here today. I learned a lot. I have some work to do, but it's always a pleasure. And I can't wait to see who the recipients are and what you're going to be doing in the future. So for those who are either, you know, wanting some advice, or when you get to the entrepreneur stage, you know, reach out to one of us, because we've learned sometimes the hard way. But and some of those organizations that we mentioned, you can follow up with us directly if you didn't catch it. The presentation will have some of those links to some of those resources as well. And yeah, we're going to do one more session at the end of this month. Another financial, it is financial literacy, but I learned now that maybe we want to, you know, change that word to financial knowledge or acumen or something, right? But I think it should start so much younger. I'm glad that they're starting to look at a little bit in elementary, but we have a long way to go, because really, you know, if you're financially fit, it really can make your life a lot better. So everyone else, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And so we'll be back November 30th. And then in December, we have Hilda Gann, who is we're going to finish 2020 strong. And we're going to talk about mission, vision, and values, and kind of going back to, you know, what the purpose or passion is, and then how do you align that to the work you do, and revisiting that and going back into, you know, thinking about 2021 goals. So that'll be a great one too. So everyone have a wonderful day. And I hope to see you again next time. And stay healthy, stay safe. Okay. Thanks again, Tracey. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.